Welcome. You are here at the Looking Forward Show. Jeff Abramowitz here at PhillyCam TV. We're live streaming in Xfinity 66 and Channel 966 at Fios TV 29 and 30 at Roku, Apple TV, and Facebook Live. And we'll be airing tomorrow on PhillyCam WPPM LP at 5 o'clock p.m. It's 106.5. And I am so glad to be here today. We have an amazing show for you today. We have some guests that are going to give you information and support of and all about the programs that they're doing. First, I'm really excited that George Little is here, the Executive Deputy Secretary of Pennsylvania Department of Corrections will be with us today. Erica Zavaloff will be here from Lutheran Settlement House in Philadelphia, and also Reverend Chris Jimenez will be here and be joining us from Healing Communities. A lot to talk about today. But before we get to any of that, I just got to give you a recap. A lot of good stuff going on in Philadelphia and around the country. So I want to talk first about some things that have happened recently. I mentioned in the last few shows that the city of Philadelphia has this amazing program where $500 is being given to anyone that spent any time during COVID in the Philadelphia County Prison. So if you've been in Philadelphia up on State Road at all over the past year, you got to reach out because $500 is waiting for you. All you need to do is give us a call at Looking Forward or get online and check out the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition. Has a little link on there. You don't require hardly any documentation, just some form of ID, your PP number from the City of Philadelphia prison system, and you're good to go, and we'll help you navigate that. So I'll give you more information about that. A lot of other good things happening. The City of Philadelphia, the Free Library, launched a career training program, and there's a whole section on this platform for returning citizens, for people coming home that have had some justice involvement. Check it out. It's really amazing. It's a great place for resources. It's careertraining.freelibrary.org, and it's sponsored by the Philadelphia Free Library. So other things you should know that have been happening. One is last week, we finished our elections for the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition, and I'm really excited to announce that Asada Thomas, the from Philadelphia Fight Institute for Criminal Justice has been elected the chair of the organization for the next 2 years, and yours truly was elected vice chair. So I'll be serving 2 years as vice chair and then 2 years of chairman after that. And then we have Maurice Jones from Par Recycling was elected as a member at large. Jay Adams from Philadelphia Fight. Michael McKee from Broad Street Ministries was elected. Jackie Johnson from St. Cova Healing Studios, and Shernine Weathers from the Philadelphia Office of Homeless Services was also brought in. So really excited, looking forward to a new future for the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition. So excited about that. So much else is happening. I want to tell you that I was really excited last week when I saw on a feed that I got that Sunday Breakfast had this amazing program. Now, I know we're all going through a little bit of mourning because the Philadelphia 76ers lost, and we won't get into that. We're not going to go there tonight, but I do want to say I saw the coolest thing. One of our partners is Sunday Breakfast Mission, Rescue Mission, so the largest homeless shelter in Philadelphia for men. And Sunday Breakfast had an event that coincided with Game 6. And it actually was sponsored by Joel Embiid and the 76ers. And they had the cheerleaders were out there, and they had a big screen television, and they had steak sandwiches, and it was really fun. And each of the men that were living there were announced as players pregame. So it was really amazing. I want to thank the 76ers and Joel Embiid for sponsoring that event, because the smile on their faces was just remarkable. I also want to give a shout out to Tashid Carr. They ran this great event last Saturday for Juneteenth in North Philadelphia at 19th and Tioga. So if you're a young person and you play basketball, you got to check out City Athletics and Tashid Carr's program. They revamped this whole church and put in a whole bunch of basketball courts on there, and they have a youth basketball camp coming this summer. So please check it out. And also for everyone that celebrated Juneteenth over the weekend, a big shout out to you, because there was a lot of great events throughout the city of Philadelphia, and we're really excited. I was excited to participate in a bunch of them. So that out of the way, our first guest tonight is going to be right up, and usually it's Lou Narvaez from Pennsylvania Probation and Parole and Department of Corrections. So today we have somebody really special. George Little is going to be with us, Executive Deputy Secretary of Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, and we're going to be right back with correct. And we're here today at PhillyCam Television, and also PhillyCam Radio for tomorrow. We're here with George Little, Deputy Secretary of Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. How are you, Secretary Little?
Jeff, I'm great, and it's an honor and a privilege to be with you and your viewers, as well as the other guests this evening.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you. You have been the Deputy Secretary of Community Corrections and Reentry at Pennsylvania Department of Corrections since 2017, quite a long time. And before that, you did a short stint as Director of Community Corrections since 2016. I read your bio, and I was shocked to see that you had spent so much time, over 26 years, in the state of Tennessee. It was everything from warden to regional director, and for the Department of Corrections down there. So many years of corrections and so much expertise that you have. You and I first met when we sat next to each other at the Pennsylvania Reentry Council several years ago. The Attorney General's started the Reentry Council, and I was sitting next to you, and you were one of the few secretaries that were there from all the departments, and I was grateful to hear a lot of the comments. But I want to welcome you, and I have to give you a thank before we even start. I guess Lou Narvaez has been on our show religiously since this show started as a radio show 3 years ago, and he comes on every week. He's rarely ever missed a show, and he shares with us what's going on behind the walls and also in probation and parole. So we're grateful that the Department of Corrections allows him to come on and share the information, and we wanted to give you some space to do it as well. So let's check in first. How are you?
Again, great. You mentioned my years of correctional service. I guess you could say I'm a repeater. I have worked at various levels in corrections, and I just can't seem to stay away, but it hopefully is in a good way, and hopefully with Lou and Deputy Secretary Christian Stevens and the rest of the crew on the field services side and our reentry staff, we're making a positive difference. I'd like to think that over the last 4 or 5 years, certainly since I've been with the Pennsylvania Department, we've made some steps forward, and so I'm just excited about what's here to come. We've all gone through this last year and a half of COVID, and I suspect at the beginning we were all very uncertain about what the future held. One thing I was certain of is that what came out at the end of COVID, and not that we're at the end yet, but was not going to be the same as what went in, and that certainly seems to be the case. But with all that said, I think the things that excite me are our focus on successful reentry, the fact that we here in Pennsylvania are focusing on a sustained approach, not enough to just help somebody get home, but help them to be able to stay home, help to make our communities better in whatever way that we can, and doing so in a way that really focuses on the individual, focuses on the community, going mobile, which I'm sure Lou has talked about. Getting our parole agents out to meet with the reentrants right where they are, to be out in the community, and our halfway houses, moving away, because you mentioned my being director of community corrections, getting away from the notion of halfway houses and thinking more in terms of transitional living. Hopefully many of our men and women can get back to home, but we also understand maybe a bridge or two got burned along the way, and so whatever we can do to help them mend fences, rebuild the bridges, or certainly find a path that is sustainable is something that we're focusing on. As far as the department as a whole coming out of COVID, we got 70% vaccination rate within the inmate population. So that's allowing us to reestablish contact visits, open up our operations. We've got 5 facilities already where we've been doing contact visitation. It's gone well, so we're bringing 5 more on just this week. And then we're looking at bringing some more on after the 4th of July holiday, with the goal being to eventually have all of our facilities back on contact visitation, if not by the beginning of August, before then, but certainly by the beginning of August. And I think we're headed in the right direction on that.
So it's great because, so first of all, I love guests that have their whole their whole agenda right in front of them and just go for it. Just bring it on. I love it because you know what you want to get out there. And the reality is that, you know, we're really hearing it from the horse's mouth. Oftentimes whisper down the lane is what's going on behind the walls. We called it inmate.com when I was inside. Like inmate.com would say, oh yeah, we're getting visitation tomorrow. And we, you know, for sure wouldn't happen. But we're really hearing it from you. And that's really important for the community as well as for the men and women. We hear a lot of times that there are men inside the walls that are listening to this show, and they're really hearing it from the top source here. So just curiosity, COVID, you know, I know it wreaked havoc inside, and had spoken with Secretary Wetzel about it. I was really astonished that you were so aggressive at getting vaccinations and vaccine for everybody. The vaccine rate, now you mentioned 70%, and that's awesome because I know it was a target. Was that for guards as well as for inmates?
Our target was to have everybody at 70%. We've not been able to achieve that at all of our facilities, although I think we're moving in that direction for the inmate population. We've had lower levels of staff acceptance on the vaccination, but as I think everybody here, if they don't already know, as of the 28th, the mask restrictions will be lifted. We're still very concerned, particularly about this new Delta variant. It seems to be pretty contagious, and you know, if you get it, it's from what I understand a pretty bad deal. So we shouldn't let up our guard, certainly in terms of vaccination. We're still encouraging masks. I still, you know, we wear it here in the studio. Don't have ours on right now. I still wear mine many places. I've had both of the Moderna shots, so I'm fully vaccinated. But we're not out of the woods yet. And so we're continuing to monitor. And if things change, I can't emphasize this enough, speaking of inmate.com, if things change and we start to see an uptick of cases, then, you know, we'll adjust accordingly. But one thing I will say, communication has been key. Secretary Wetzel and the rest of the leadership team has communicated with the inmate population, and the population has communicated back to us. And that's one of the reasons why we're moving ahead with the opening up, because we know that everybody's really been very cooperative in getting us safely to this point, because it could have been a lot worse. And you just have to look at some of the other states and other parts of the country to see what could have happened.
Yeah. So if you look at, I follow the Marshall Project, and the Marshall Project tracks all the states across the country, and Pennsylvania's done remarkably well through all of this. We're really glad to hear visitations coming back. We're hoping that as more and more facilities get vaccinated and reach that mark, that, you know, visitations are such an important piece of this journey for men and women going through. You know, not seeing family makes it that much harder when they come home to, you know, reconnect with them. I was really I'm participating in an event coming up. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about it. The Department of Corrections is actually having a job fair. Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. And I think, Jeff, it speaks to, you know, there's some good that's come out of COVID on a lot of fronts, but one for us is we've made more use of technology, particularly video technology, like video visitation. Some of the inmates have been able to reconnect with family in ways that they hadn't been before because of the burdens of travel and the like. We're actually going to employ that video technology to do a virtual job fair. And that's coming up. We had a series of job fairs that were scheduled pre-COVID that we weren't able to go forward on because they were face-to-face events. And even though we're opening up, we decided we're going to continue down this virtual path. And so that is coming up in, I believe, in the next week. We will follow on with additional job fairs. And the one thing I do want to say to anybody who's out there, particularly in the reentry community, but in general, there are a lot of jobs out there. And one thing I've noticed is that the pay rates seem to be up. Their bonuses and the like. Dorinda Hammerland, who that's a name to be known. Dorinda is our employment specialist, has been working with employers, with reentry coalitions, other groups all across the state to connect people together, employers with would-be employees. So more details to come forward on that, but want to encourage everybody with that.
So Dorinda's been on the show before. She was on our radio show about a year ago, before COVID, just before COVID. And Christian's been on a bunch of times on the show. So we welcome, I know he's here. And just for our audience, we are, Deputy Secretary is present in the studio, but he's in a separate room here because we're still respecting the COVID rules here at PhillyCam. A few other things. First of all, I was really surprised this job fair is touching so many people, and it's coming up. I'm going to participate in it for Jeb's Looking Forward program on Friday, and even on Thursday they're doing something for LGBTQ community as well as veterans. So they really are reaching out, and Dorinda's been doing a great job with that. One of the things I wanted to spend a second on is the call-in program, and it's coming up again. It's later this week. Can you tell us a little about what the call-in is?
This is one of several attempts that we're making to address the violence in the community. The call-in program is based on a national model for basically high-risk individuals who happen to be, in our case, under primarily parole supervision. The call-in is literally that. They're called in. They meet with our staff. They meet with other key players in the law enforcement community, and basically laying out, if you will, the consequences of the continued violent action on the community. But what I think makes this a model worth continuing is we offer up an alternative, and we subscribe to the notion that life really is about choices. We all have choices. You and I had a choice to be here this afternoon, and so with the call-in, we lay out the choices. We lay out the consequences. So the consequences certainly are the disruption of the community. Consequence could be going back to prison. Consequences certainly could be death. I mean, that's the world in which we're living right now. But the rewards could be services, and we're certainly tailoring them to the individuals. So we've got that coming up. We held off on doing that because of COVID, because it really, if it's going to be done, it has to be done face to face. And it's a dialogue. So I don't want to make it sound like somebody's lecturing. This really is a give and take. But at the end of the day, it's laying out in a real stark contrast the choices that we all have to really stem the violence, which, by the way, speaking of COVID, is something I don't know that any of us could have anticipated where we are in 2021. But nonetheless, we're here, and we do have the call-in coming up with our partners, along with the Department of Correction and the Board of Probation and Parole.
It is a great program. It scares the pants off of me every time I go there, and I'm not one of the targets in the audience, but I'm there as one of the community leaders afterwards. And I'll tell you quite honestly, we have more jobs right now out there than we have people to fill them. So we're coming locked and loaded with a bunch of jobs and job opportunities for men and women that are going through some tough times. So, Deputy Secretary, just any last thoughts? Thank you so much for coming on today. I want to give you the last shot. Anything you want to have us to have on our radar screen?
Well, again, I think the last thing I want to leave you with is stay tuned. This is really just a beginning. We're looking forward in a positive way. So, for instance, we talked about violence. We really want to promote peace on the streets rather than focusing on the negative. We want to focus on successful reentry, families that get back together rather than talking about people coming back, recidivism. And so just stay tuned to, I think, a lot of great developments. Lou's a great guy. I'm sure he'll be back here carrying the message forward in the next week. And know that he's part of a larger team that stands behind the success of every reentrant here in the community. So I'm going to step back. I know we've got some other great guests this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them.
Awesome. Deputy Secretary, thank you so much for being with us. And you're here listening to Looking Forward Show, and we'll be right back. Are back and Looking Forward, and I am really excited about our next guest. Erica Zavalov is a Director of Development and Communications for Lutheran Settlement House. And Erica, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
So it's kind of strange because I live about, I don't know, maybe 100 or so yards from your from your building, Lutheran Settlement House, and I walk by it all the time. I've been a fan because I hear so much of the great work you're doing in Philadelphia. But you are the director of development and communications at Lutheran Settlement House since 2017, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got there.
Sure. So I, like most development professionals, ended up here on accident. I started thinking I wanted to be getting my PhD in counseling and really listening to people tell me all their problems all the time. And shortly into school, realized I do not want to do that, but kind of knew I wanted to be involved in social justice work and giving back how I could and building community, and never quite knew what that looked like. And my mother always told me to get my MSW, but I was like, no, Mom, I refuse. I'm just being rebellious. And then after doing some stints in AmeriCorps and being a colonizer in the Peace Corps, I realized she was right. And I went back. I moved to Philadelphia to get my MSW in 2011. Was really drawn in by my interest actually in the criminal justice system. So I was interested in hearing from Secretary Little beforehand, and just fell in love with Philly. I grew up in Jersey, just 40 minutes away. So
Wait a second. So I want to go back to that reentry piece for a second
okay.
because I read your bio and it said that I know you were co-director of a prison reentry program, and it was with Peace Corps, but it wasn't local. It was in Botswana.
Oh, those were, well, actually, I did go into a prison in Botswana to go for a tour. The reentry program was in Philly when I was in grad school. My first year placement was with the Pennsylvania Prison Society. And then second year, I was head of the Goldring Reentry Initiative out of Penn.
So that's one of our partners. What a great program that was. So we'll have to that's a separate side issue.
Yeah,
but
we'll have to connect.
Yeah, it was an awesome program at Penn that they have. So tell me a little bit about, I walk by the building all the time. I hear about some great programming, but tell me about Lutheran Settlement House. First of all, I was shocked. It's been around for a long time. I think 1903 you guys started.
1902, that extra year is very important because next year is our 120th anniversary. So we're not ready to celebrate quite yet. Yeah, I'm in our Fishtown building right now, which is where we've been since 1902. And the picture you shared in the transition, the building looks so similar still, especially on the Frankfurt Avenue side. And I know a lot of history has gotten lost in the last 119 years, but my understanding is deaconesses from the Lutheran Church actually lived here and would help the influx of immigrants coming into the river wards from the during the Industrial Revolution. And folks were coming, they needed help with food, housing, education, perhaps some forced assimilation and some language learning. But we've evolved since then, still maintaining our settlement house roots, and we've just evolved to change and meet the needs of our community.
So
but
tell
the heart
us.
is still there.
Yeah, first of all, the facade of the building says 1902 on it. You're right. And I walked by it last night and snapped a picture. And the facade of the building is totally the same as it was back then, which is remarkable. But on the side of the building, they have this amazing mural. When was that put up? Do you know?
I think in 2014.
Wow, it's a while
long ago. Yeah.
Very cool. So I think we all walk by the building. Anyone that lives in Kensington or Fishtown walks by that building all the time, but I don't know that everybody really knows what happens inside the building and what goes on. So can you share a little bit about the programs that you have there and the work that you do?
Yeah, I think we're really unique in the social service world because we're still a settlement house, which, multi-service organizations, I don't think they're not as popular as they once were. So what we do here is we've evolved out of those roots that I was talking about, serving the immigrants who were coming in the early 1900s. And what we do here, we have our biggest program is our bilingual domestic violence program. So we work with survivors of all gender identities and their families. We do counseling, we do housing support. We have a masculinity allyship program to get men involved in ending domestic violence. We work with teens to do healthy relationship and leadership skills. And we have a hospital-based program with trained advocates in all of the major hospital systems in the city. And one really big thing I'd like to share with the viewers is we also co-run the 24-hour Philadelphia Domestic Violence Hotline with the other members of the DV4, Women Against Abuse, Women in Transition, and Congresso. So any time of day, every day of the week, people can call the Free Domestic Violence Hotline for themselves. If you're in danger, we can safety plan. And we also, if you just need some information about domestic violence resources, we can help with that. The number is 866-723-3014. We also have a shelter for families experiencing homelessness in North Philly, and we usually have around 25 families, so 70 children and 25 adults at any given time. And we do really trauma-informed intensive case management with the parents. We are one of the only shelters in the city that has a full-time on-site trauma therapist who works with somebody of any age to help them process the experience that led to homelessness, help them heal, so we can then help people on their journey towards their next step in housing. We also have, if you live in Fishtown, you've probably seen, especially pre-COVID, a lot of older adults coming and going. We have a senior center on site where we work with older adults in the neighborhood. That's more of a trying to keep you active and engaged kind of program. Bingo is very competitive here. We've been doing chair yoga, line dancing. If you're ever under the senior center on line dancing day, you think the world is ending. They have so much stamina and energy. It's so impressive. And we also have a food pantry on site, which has become one of our biggest programs during COVID. In a typical year, we would give out 120,000 pounds of food. And then during COVID, we gave out over 250,000 pounds of food. And we see hundreds of households every month for the pantry.
So that's so amazing. So I'll tell you, first of all, one of my neighbors in Fishtown uses the pantry and swears by it. Just he always amazed at the quality of the food that's given out and the quantity of food and how many people you support. So you said so much in that last clip.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I know. I really want to go back because I really want to talk about a few of those things. And the first thing on my list is domestic violence. So during COVID, we've seen this uptick of domestic violence around the country, certainly here in Philadelphia as well. And I'm curious, have you noticed the change? Have you been servicing more in the area? And what kind of programming do you have? I know there's a hotline, but what kind of programming supports men and women that are involved in domestic violence issues?
Sure. So we saw when the lockdown first happened, a real uptick in calls to the hotline, and actually a lot of clients who had finished counseling reaching back out because they were feeling, maybe we had safety planned and they had found a way to be safe at home, but now that they were forced to be home, things, escalated and really changed for people in abuse situations. So we had to hire more counselors, so we didn't have to go to a wait list because we didn't want anyone to have to wait to speak to anyone. So we hired, I believe, 2 additional part-time counselors, bilingual counselors during COVID. And we just, it was really hard because everyone's at home. So it's a lot more difficult to speak to a counselor without your abuser knowing. So we switched instantly to any sort of communication method that somebody could do safely: text messaging, emails, if you could do a video call. And then we have free counseling in multiple languages that's available. We also, once you finish counseling and you're a little bit further out from your crisis, we, I believe we're the only program in the city that has a survivors network. It's a support group that went virtual during COVID. And they're more like advocates, and they're setting policy agendas. They work with our hospital partners and are looking at all of the hospital policies and protocols around domestic violence and making recommendations from their own experience.
So it's incredible what you do with that, because domestic violence is a big issue. And I was really surprised when you just mentioned about the number of families that you provide housing assistance for, which is so needed in our community right now. There are so many people living on the streets, homeless, that there just isn't good. There's for individuals, let alone families. So to be able to provide family support, and you mentioned that your housing facility is in North Philadelphia. If people are looking for or need temporary housing, how would they go about getting that?
That is a great question. So all homeless services through the city of Philadelphia are centralized through the Apple Tree Intake Center, which I have to look up that number. I can casually.
We can
Google
post
that.
it.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the number. I should know that offhand. I apologize. Yeah, so everyone is required to go through there, and then they match you with a program that fits your family size and your experience.
Awesome. Yeah, just such an important thing for the housing pieces of it. And then just the community piece of people going there for activities and things like that. If people wanted to volunteer or get involved with Lutheran Settlement House, how would they go about doing it?
They can contact me directly, and I can hook you up with our volunteer opportunities, or if you want to make a donation or an in-kind donation. So my phone number is 215-426-8610, extension 1218. And then my email is really annoying to spell out. I don't know if there's a way to just post that.
We will. We'll post your contact information.
Yeah, they could people just contact me directly. Our volunteer opportunities are ever evolving as we open up a bit more during COVID, but we have multiple volunteers a day in the pantry. It's a huge help. We're moving tens of thousands of pounds of food every week and need all the help we can get.
Just remarkable. Erica, thank you so much for being here. So Lutheran Settlement House, it's easy to find. It's on Frankfort Avenue, and the address is 1340 Frankfort Avenue. It's near Frankfort and Girard, Frankfort and Thompson, right in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of really easy to find. Just look for the big mural out front. And thank you so much for all you do. We're going to ask you to hang out there. We're going to take a short break. We're coming back with our next guest. But after that, we want to bring you on for a little wrap session at the end. So hang out. You're listening to Looking Forward, and we're going to be right back in just a minute. Back and welcome to Looking Forward. I have to tell you, the next guest is a friend, and I use the word friend because since going away and spending some time inside and returning back to Philadelphia, friend has a very, very different definition for me. A friend to me is somebody you could call with just about anything and a need, and know that they're going to be there no matter what happens. And Chris Jimenez is that person for me. Chris and I go back. We were fellows at Just Leadership together several years ago, and got closer on long rides from Philadelphia on the train or the car from Philadelphia up to New York City, where the fellowship was. Chris is a retired U.S. military. He is founder and president of Recovery Christian Center, the Urban CDC. He is a pastor at Lombard Central Presbyterian Church. He's a national director of advocacy, executive director of the PA chapter for Healing Communities. He's a chaplain for Philadelphia Stand Down. The list goes on and on and on. But I want to welcome Chris Jimenez to the show. How are you, Chris?
Hey, good, Jeff. How are you?
Good to see you. So I got to ask you about your shirt. So for those people on the radio, they're not going to be able to see it. But I actually thought for a second you were a Boy Scout, because it's the color of it has patches on the side of it. So first, Chris, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on the show a little and sharing with us. I have to ask a favor today. We're not going to do it right this second, but in a little bit, I have a clip I wanted to play because I was touched by something on your website. But why don't you tell us a little about what you do and for the community? Because we know it takes a village, and a lot of times it starts with faith, and you're right in the heart of it.
Well, so kind of during COVID, my life's kind of been in two phases. Three phases actually. First is just sort of direct community work as the pastor at Lombard Central. We've been operated a soup kitchen for about 35 years and had a small emergency food pantry that kind of immediately just uses exploded. So now we're probably up to feeding about 300 families a month, with food and providing clothing and other resources, comfort kits for the homeless. So that's been just sort of any need that we can take care of to make this whole pandemic easier is what we've been trying to do. So that's been the work here at Lombard. We're also in the process of putting together a community garden. We're one of the things that we learned during this whole process is that sustainability is something that a lot of us in our communities didn't have. And so doing things like just teaching some community gardening, getting back to those skills that, my grandma, she had a yard about the same size as mine and, which isn't much, but she grew everything and had fresh vegetables all winter because she would grow during the spring and summer and then can for the fall. And we've lost a lot of those skills. So reteaching those skills is a part of some things that we're looking at doing here at Lombard. And
Chris,
then you got the Healing Communities side, which is Healing Communities is a faith-based reentry network. I'm a returning citizen, and it is led by faith leaders who are also returning citizens. And then we have a whole advocacy side of the house. We're the largest faith-based in Pennsylvania. We're the largest faith-based criminal justice advocacy organization in the state.
We're going to talk about Healing Communities in a second. First, I want to talk about the food bank that you have, because I think you do it a disservice when you play it down, because I've seen the meals that you guys serve there, and they are home cooked meals that I'm telling you is some of the best home cooked food. And I actually, whenever I talk to you, you're either going there to do some cooking or you're opening up the kitchen early in the morning for to serve some meals. I'm just so impressed at all the work you guys are doing. Did you notice a greater need during COVID? And did you how were you able to survive servicing all the community?
Absolutely. We knew there was much greater need. I mean, I would say within 2 weeks of the shutdown, we went from serving, probably 10, 15, 20 individuals per day to 50 in the soup kitchen. And then the food pantry, we literally went through a whole month of food in 1 week. Wow. As far as the emergency food pantry. So yeah, how we were able to sustain is really, reaching out to other organizations and increasing partnerships. And we started looking at ways to build capacity on that when a lot of other people were just saying, we're just going to close down. And we were, no, we can't. We needed to find ways to expand. And so that increased partnerships with Phil Abundance, with Share, with the USDA, with Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, to groups like Wyoto Street Community Garden, which has invested a significant amount of money and vegetables out of their garden, to a group at Drexel called Sharing Excess. And so, which was doing food sustainability. And so we just kind of all came together and started, serving the community out of that.
Great stuff. You talk about Healing Communities. Healing Communities, I know, is led by Doc Trulier, correct?
Yeah, he's our national director and spokesperson. He's actually transitioning into a different role. So currently I'm co-executive director of the national office and executive director of PA.
Yeah, I can't keep up with all the things you're doing, but I want to ask a favor, so I'm going to indulge my audience to indulge for a second. But I have a video that I'd like you to. I just watched the other day, and I was so touched by it. And it's with Doc Trulier. But I want to take a second, and I would like to share it with the audience. So here's just a little tidbit of what Healing Communities is all about.
I think you're having some audio issues.
Am I? All right.
Yeah,
We'll
nothing's coming
stop
up.
that a second. Thanks, Chris.
But
Yeah,
what, so I could talk a little bit because I've seen that video a lot of times, in our work, but it was really, Doc was preaching at Wheaton College, and he was really what he was talking about was sort of how our society just kind of puts returning citizens in this whole second class. And we really needed to rethink how we treated people that were coming home from prison, how we needed to invest in their success, how we needed to open up our opportunities and not continue putting barriers in the way to successful reentry.
Yeah, he is. He is so passionate about that, and he talks about. He brings religion into the work that we do. On the streets and working with men and women coming home, which is, and he really is very impactful in the way he talks. But more importantly, his passion for reentry, his passion for helping people and bringing humanity back into the whole system. And you've had quite a journey yourself through the justice system. So I'm curious now, like, have you landed? Is it a place where you feel like you're back? We've those people that go through the criminal justice system often, reach a point where, they're treading water until they finally get their feet planted. And I'm curious, you've done so much since you've been home. Is there more to come?
Yeah, no, I don't think we're ever. I don't think any of us have done. I kind of had this mantra that none of us are free until all of us are free. And what I mean by that is I'm not taking away accountability. I mean, yes, I'm a prison abolitionist, first and foremost. I believe that what we're doing now in our criminal justice system is just not working. And it is, making the situation much worse. And we really need to rethink how we're doing that. But I would say, me personally, yes, I have a comfortable life. I've had some educational opportunities open for me, some employment opportunities open for me. I'm able to take care of my family. I'm a homeowner. All of those things. But I get pulled over and a cop runs my record. It still comes up. And we're one of the only. And even though my stuff is more than 25 years old, I've been off supervision more than 20 years. Interaction with law enforcement outside of my professional capacity, what do they see when they look at me? They see the person who made that mistake 25 years ago. They don't see the fact that I have a doctorate degree. They don't see the fact that I'm a licensed psychologist. They don't see the fact that I'm an ordained pastor. They don't see the fact that I have appointments from the attorney general, from the governor, from from the mayor. Those they don't see any of that. And I think that's the one barrier, that can be sometimes hard to overcome, is that by the powers that be, a lot of times we are still seen as the same people who made whatever that mistake was years and years ago. The other side of that is, let's be honest, there's 45,000 barriers, and most of them aren't even attached to the justice system, but about 45,000 barriers to an individual in our society put around individuals who have criminal convictions. So, simple as yes, I said I was a homeowner, but my mortgage had to be in my wife's name, because even though I had a better credit score than she did, because I was a criminal record, they wanted to give me a significantly higher interest rate than what she qualified for. And the only difference was the fact that I had a criminal record and she didn't.
Yeah, I think
those things are still in place.
We made a lot of we're making a lot of strides with that. We just, the governor last year passed some occupational licensing restrictions that are being looked at again and changing the system up. But the reality is that Google is out there, and many people that get employed are Googled, and the first thing that comes up is the worst thing that they could ever imagine happening to them, and we're constantly reminded of it all the time. The advocacy work you do, Chris, I know you're up in Harrisburg a lot. You're pushing for prison reform, for to really end mass incarceration in our country. And I think that a lot of the work that you do happens in your community, and it starts at the grassroots. I've been reading a great book about change, and the change doesn't happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. And I think you're proof of that. So thanks for all your advocacy work and the work that you're doing. If people wanted to get involved or need support from either Healing Communities or from your church, how would they reach out to you?
Well, at Healing Communities, we have a website, healingcommunitiesusa.com. So they can access there. If it comes to need from Lombard Central, our phone number is 215-222-3044. Or you can reach me and my work cell is 267-582-5013. I'm also on Facebook at Chris Jimenez. Lombard Central, we have a website, it's lombardcentral.org, but we also have a Facebook page, Lombard Central Presbyterian Church. So any of those ways you can reach out to us, and we will be glad to help out in any way we can.
Awesome. So Chris, we're going to take a quick break. We want you to hang in there, and we're going to bring you and we're going to bring Erica back. And the last segment, we're going to be talking about Are You Serious? And some things that it takes a village to fix. So you're listening to Looking Forward, and we're going to be right back. Welcome back to Looking Forward, and we have three guests with us now. We have Chris, myself, as quoted as one. We have Erica, and we have Chris. Thank you so much for both of you joining us, and it was good to hear from Deputy Secretary at the beginning of the show. And this is a section I call, it's usually the end where we wrap up, we talk about things, and I call it Are You Serious? Because I shake my head sometimes and say, are you serious? Because I'm just not sure that, I can even believe it. So I want to throw some things out there, and I'd like you to get your comment and feedback, because the theme of today's show is It Takes a Village, and both of you are doing some incredible work in the city of Philadelphia. And one of the things I'd like to share is, or get our audience to understand, is that there are all these issues that we have in society, but there are great places that are helping support people that are going through these challenges. So I want to start off with a topic. Right now, through COVID, we've seen an incredible increase in drug and alcohol addiction throughout Philadelphia. And in particular, I drove down Frankfurt Avenue the other day, and it was kind of a nightmare just watching people on the streets that are really battling challenges. And I'm wondering, give our Philadelphia audience and people around the country some information, some guidance, like the opioid addiction issues. Where should people be turning, and what, if anything, can your organization do to help support people that are going through those challenges? Chris, you want to kick us off?
So one of the things we always do is we've built partnerships with both Project Home and with CBH. I'm a mental health first aid instructor. We try to do a lot around referring people to help. And also referring them to the various 12-step fellowships. The barrier that during COVID that was a real problem was a lot of recovery facilities weren't necessarily taking in new people for a while because they were afraid of people bringing in COVID to the existing population. You also had a lot of the 12-step fellowship meetings and recovery meetings were moving online, and so a lot of new people didn't necessarily have internet access to be able to access a meeting that was going on Zoom. So that's those have all been challenges. But I will say Department of Behavioral Health and Community Behavioral Health have done a lot to try and meet those challenges. So somebody's really, CBH has a hotline, and I cannot remember it off the top of my head. But you can call in if you're in trouble and you want to get clean. You can call in and they will. I'm not saying it's 100% all the time of getting people into services, but they will do their best to get you into something. It is a challenge, but there is help out there.
Yeah, Erica.
Yeah, we also, like Dr. Chris said, refer out. We worked so on Frankfurt Ave, between Lehigh and Girard, up and down the corridor, and even further up, there is a lot of injection drug use and instances of addiction. So we worked with the Business Improvement District here to make cards that have the Project Home outreach number, CBH, DBH numbers, because the initial response here had been to call the police for those moments, and we were trying to kind of have a care response and a healthcare response. So we've been working with businesses to share those hotlines too, so that business owners and staff at restaurants and bars around here can call those numbers instead of the police.
Awesome. We've heard a lot. So I have two experts on the line now. So both of you are going to be on the hot seat for this one. But you both mentioned trauma-informed care. And I'm curious, trauma-informed care is something that we hear a lot about. But I'm wondering, can you put it in context for my audience so that they understand what trauma-informed care and, why is it so important for us to acknowledge it today? Either one of you can start it off.
You can go.
So the basic understanding of trauma-informed care is that when we understand that people who are coming in to have experienced huge amounts of trauma, we were just talking about this earlier on Facebook about how many of us have been affected by so many things during the pandemic that we were on top of what we were already dealing with. Trauma-informed care, what it does is it seeks to acknowledge and define solutions to helping someone process that trauma along with doing everything. So it's sort of like a holistic approach to what individuals are going through. And it means that we may be looking at a lot of different dimensions of what is going on. I would say half of the understanding that addiction, which is a huge problem in the city, for most individuals, addiction is actually the secondary illness to either trauma or some other form of mental illness, like serious mental illness like depression or bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. All of those things come into it. But there is, even among the population of those who are dealing with mental illness, are a lot of times also dealing with trauma. Trauma may have been the thing that triggered it. So if, us having to sort of help individuals deal, process with, and work through that trauma is really important. And it also needs to inform all of our other healthcare decisions as well.
I kind of think of it as the why. It's not why did you do the event or the crime or whatever it was you did, but what's underlying it? Like, what's the real deep reason for what triggered it? What in your past led you down that pike? You mentioned, Erica, trauma-informed care, and I was wondering, do they do trauma-informed care at Lutheran Settlement House?
Definitely. Dr. Chris gave great explanation. Thank you for that. I am a little bit far out from my clinical classes in my social work degree, so I didn't want to bring shame to any of my professors from back then. But I think that in practice here, trauma-informed care looks like love. We look at the entire person, their whole family. Any people might come to the food pantry, but that might not be food insecurity, might be one of 8 other things a family is grappling with at the moment. So really, offering services for whatever else somebody might be experiencing, and really bringing a lot of care, compassion, and love to that work.
There's the The next topic I want to talk about just briefly is probably on the top of everyone's radar screen in Philadelphia right now. It's gun violence. We're seeing a tremendous surge in gun violence throughout the city of Philadelphia. Last year was bad. This year is looking like it's going to be far worse than even last year was. And I'm wondering, from your perch, from where you guys sit, is what's going on in the streets, and what, as just a community, just as the village, what can we do to kind of help? Either one of you can jump in on that.
I'm not sure how to answer that one.
I stumped him. I stumped him.
It's a big answer.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. It is a multi-layered answer, but the reality is that all of the research tells us, no matter what kind of type of crime it is, that the root cause of crime is poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, I hate to say this, but poverty has increased under COVID. Desperation has increased under COVID. Lack of finances and basic necessities has increased over COVID. You combine that with the fact that we're all sort of out of work and we're all, confined, and none of us are really meant to be sort of confined. That this was I hate to say this, it was kind of gonna happen. And we can talk about all the Band-Aid efforts we want to, but until we really get serious, you talked about this being serious this being, are you serious? Until we get serious as a society and begin to really address, things like wealth disparity, healthcare disparity, education disparity, and really begin to invest in communities that have been forgotten for so long, or deliberately not invested in for so long. And also dealing with that most of that is based in Jim Crow era stuff. So until we get acknowledged that we redlined those communities for so long, and now they actually really do need investment to come up.
Chris.
My first
you're going to get to it.
Yeah.
My first thought for a solution was money in all aspects, and you touched on a lot of that.
Yeah, it's kind of so one of the things we're seeing right now is that we're seeing that there's employment opportunities that are opening up left and right. And I want to encourage our audience now, don't wait. If you're receiving unemployment, don't wait until September, until it runs out and everyone floods the market going back and looking for jobs. There are good, high-paying jobs right now that a lot of them are actually, we had a number of jobs came through today with bonuses, signing bonuses that are being offered for people, because there's employers they want to get up and running, they want to get back on their feet. And now is the time, if you're not working, to look for that opportunity, and not something that you have to do, but look for something you really want to do. There's a great article in the Wall Street Journal recently that talked about the reality that a lot of people are pivoting now and looking for that job which they've been doing for 10 or 15 or 20 years and saying, I really didn't like it so much. It's a good time to do something different. Now is the time to find that opportunity. And if you have a criminal background, or if you have some issues that you've been struggling with, the window of opportunity is open wide. And organizations that are out there to help you. I know Looking Forward, the reentry program that we have at JEVS is available. And I know if you reached out to either Eric or Dr. Chris, that both of them would be able to steer you to the right direction. I would ask, remember, there are resources. The Philadelphia Reentry Coalition is another great place to look, and all these resources out there. So I encourage you to jump in. Lutheran Settlement House. Thank you, Erica. Thank you so much for sharing all that you do. I feel much more educated now as I walk by your building every day. I'm going to give you a wave, and I'll be able to spread the word a little bit. Reverend Chris, thank you so much. You've been a good friend, and congratulations on all the great work you're doing. You're listening to Looking Forward, and we will be airing tomorrow. This broadcast airs tomorrow on WPPN LP 106.5 FM. At 5 o'clock tomorrow, and you can see it again on PhillyCam television, and also on Roku, Apple TV, and there's also a YouTube channel for Looking Forward. So welcome to jump in and watch all of our episodes. I want to thank all of our guests today, Deputy Secretary George Little, Erica Zavala from Lutheran Settlement House, and Reverend Chris Jimenez. It does take a village, and all of you are the reason why Philadelphia is a little bit better place to live in. So thank you very much. This is Looking Forward, and we'll see you next week.